Energy is everything. Insightful interview with Simon Alexander Ong, author of Energize. Join award-winning life coach Simon Alexander Ong as he shares his insights from his best-selling book, Energize. He delves into the art of science and energy management, showing how well-managed energy can fuel your success. Simon talks about recognizing your most energized state, understanding when to push forward and when to rest, and how to work sustainably towards your goals. He provides practical tips on identifying and maximizing your most productive times of the day, week, and year. Learn how to set boundaries, devote your energy effectively, and select the right people to invest your energy in. With simple daily practices, Simon guides to rejuvenate and maintain your energy levels, ensuring readiness for any challenge. Discover what you can achieve when fully energized. Tune into this inspiring conversation and kickstart your energy transformation today. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show, where you're about to go on a wellness driven ride. I'm so excited to share a little bit more with you about our guest today. Simon Alexander Ong is a personal development entrepreneur, coach, and public speaker. His work has invited him to Sky News, BBC Radio London, and LBC Radio to be interviewed. At the same time, in 2018, Barclays UK featured him in a nationwide campaign asking him questions on how families could embrace better lifestyle habits. His insights have also been featured in HuffPost, Forbes, Virgin, and The Guardian. Simon regularly speaks at organizations and keynote public events and conferences. These include the Peter Jones Foundation, the World Business and Executive Coach Summit, and the LSE. I'm so pleased to welcome to our stage today, Mr. Simon Alexander. Welcome.
April, thank you so much for having me on your show.
My pleasure. It definitely is all mine. I have dived into your book a bit, and I think it's absolutely incredible. I get to hear so many things about all of the ideas that you're presenting to the world around energy. So I'm super excited to dive into this conversation. Let's get started with telling the audience a little bit more about you.
So I was born here in the United Kingdom to two Malaysian Chinese parents who had come to the UK in the pursuit of a better life. I grew up in the southeast of England. I was very much a minority, and I moved to London when I started university. And up until that point, life was fairly linear. Get good grades, get to a good college, and secure a good job upon graduation. And so I started in the financial services industry at what was probably the worst time, in the middle of 2007, a year before the global financial crisis, at a company called Lehman Brothers, which collapsed 14 months after I joined. That began a very volatile career in which I was in and out of jobs for nearly 10 years. However, at the same time, it started the journey to what I now get to do today. I began asking myself questions such as, what did success mean to me? And what sort of impact did I want to have in the world? And once I started brainstorming my answers to those questions, I realized that my greatest challenge would be building a career and life around those answers. And so that eventually led me to what I now get to do today, which is to coach those in positions of leadership, Michelin star chefs, entrepreneurs, C-level executives, and community leaders, to speak at organizations and conferences around the world, sharing some of my messages of hope, inspiration, and empowerment. And in 2020, to secure a book deal with Penguin to write my first book, Energize, showing readers how when they transform their energy, they can transform their life and career.
I just absolutely love that, because it's this journey that you have embarked on, stemmed from difficult times. And I think that there's so much to be said around that. And when we experience hardship or things where we feel like we're stuck and we're not really moving forward, we start to question why over and over and over, and understand what it is that's working and what it is that's not. And so I appreciate that you show up the way that you do now, and traveling around the world and speaking on stages and teaching people the lessons that you have learned. What I appreciated a lot about your book is that you bring in many stories from different people and different people's backgrounds and hardships. And you even go into stories that are more the folk tale traditional, to bring up the lessons that are learned. And when we start to talk about energy, it's like it's this ebb and flow, and it doesn't really ever go away. You can neither create it nor destroy it, right? So we know that on a scientific level, and that is what we have proven to show. And so when we talk about that energy can neither be destroyed or created, what does that mean for you? And when did you first really discover and understand that concept?
I think for me, the moment I realized how important energy was and how I had to be more conscious as to how I dealt with it and how I channeled it was an experience in my second job. So when Lehman Brothers collapsed, I had an opportunity to move to another company. It was a hedge fund in the city of London. And on paper, it sounded a very glamorous role. I was to be a junior trader in a hedge fund, and I would be supporting some of the senior portfolio managers. However, the reality was anything but. I was getting my manager's lunches, I was doing the photocopying, I was doing a lot of the administrative tasks. Career progression was non-existent, and the culture was very toxic. And so there was this point, a scenario I share in the first chapter of the book, where I remember going to some client entertainment at the end of one year. And I texted my girlfriend at the time. I said to her, I'm going to take the last train home, so I should be back early-ish in the morning. So don't wait up for me, but I should be back early in the morning. I then proceeded to go down these stairs into a nightclub that was underground. I checked in my bag. I kept my valuables with me. But once the entertainment started and the drinks started flowing, I lost all perception of time. I somehow stumbled outside of the club early morning, completely missing the trains, and had to hail a taxi to take me home. And I didn't want to face my girlfriend with what had happened. I didn't want her to worry. But I knew I had no choice. I tried to escape the conversation by going into the bathroom and trying badly to sleep in the bathtub before she came next to me and wanted to understand what happened. I was in no state to talk about it. I tried to brush her off by simply saying, I'm fine. But the reality was far from that. When I sobered up over the next day or so, we had a good conversation where I was able to share with her how I felt completely exhausted. I felt lost in terms of my direction in life. I had this hope that if I started a career in finance, I would be able to build this successful career, because I grew up with this understanding that success was about the money you earn and the job you had. And if you worked in an industry where your parents could shout proudly about the industry you're in, then that would be successful. But this was before the crisis happened. Now, being in a job that was just draining me of any energy I had to reevaluate those thoughts and beliefs that I had. And the first place it began was really addressing my physical energy. I realized that I had, for so many years, sacrificed my sleep, survived on junk food, unhealthy, highly processed foods, and didn't really take regular exercise. And this all was compounding to this point where I was standing to lose everything. And so the journey from that point to seeing what it's like to wake up each day with energy, to know how to channel that energy, and to understand that when you do the things that energize you, you actually get more energy, was profound in taking me on a completely different path. But it started with my physical energy. I quickly realized that without your health, you can't do much else. To the healthy, they have lots of hopes, wishes, and dreams, but to the sick, they have only one. And so it was important for me to stop making my health a side hustle so that I could transfer the lack of energy from a job that was exhausting me mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually to something that could allow me to blossom.
Simon, it sounds to me like this was your rock bottom. Does that sound like maybe it was, where it was really this profound moment in time where you realized something needs to change? And I would love to journey back a little bit too, and talk about your relationship with your parents and the upbringing, and how you've talked a little bit about what you felt you needed to show up as in the world. You grew up with this idea that money, status, these are all what success is and symbolizes, and what we need to do in order to obtain that, and push and push and push, right? And really it takes the energy from us when we strive so desperately to meet a certain standard or goals in order to feel like you are accepted in the family, within society, with that status quo. Would you like to share a little bit more about that?
There was certainly a lot of pressure growing up in the household I was in. But I also don't want to focus purely on the negative, because I think while there was pressure to perform and pressure to satisfy certain definitions of success and happiness, on the other side, one of the benefits that I learned from my parents was the trait of working hard. The idea that if you want to go far in life, you've got to work hard at something. I just didn't know what that was. And so I ended up following their definition. It wasn't until I was away from their influence that I realized that the greatest journey we as humans take are the inches from our heads to our hearts. Never an easy journey, but the most important and fulfilling that you will ever embark on. And that journey is all about understanding what success means to you. How will you know that you are living a fulfilling life? Because once we have clarity on that, it awakens one of the greatest sources of energy that there is going. And this pressure really affected me. It affected me because when I got to the second year of university, I failed that year. Now, when I say I failed that year, I got an F in 3 out of the 4 exams I sat. And I remember one summer when I was logging onto the internet to check my results. I was upstairs in my uncle's house, and downstairs was my dad and the rest of the family. They had champagne in a bucket of ice, waiting to celebrate what they expected to be stellar results. And having just looked on the website of my university and seen that I had failed 3 of the 4 exams, I didn't know what I was going to do when I walked down those stairs. And I just started sweating because I was thinking, well, how do I tell them that I failed a year and I'm going to have to resit a year at university? I mean, there was this feeling of shame that swept through my body, like I've let them down. I don't deserve their gesture downstairs with the champagne. I don't deserve anything good right now because I've let everyone down. And I was up there for a while. And when I eventually came down, I didn't need to say a single word because they could tell immediately from my body language that it wasn't good. The result wasn't good. And that pressure really got to me. And I felt that shame for months about letting them down. And I wanted to prove to them that I wasn't a lost cause. So that really impacted me. I mean, from growing up, it was different because you've always got the shadow of them driving you and pushing you forward, and so you perform. But when I was away from that, when I was away from home at university on my own, it just fell apart. It just fell apart. And I think the story I shared earlier of that exhaustion at the second company I worked for was almost a culmination of a number of events that
Yeah.
finally woke me up and said, I've got to take responsibility for where I am and where I want to be. So within a short few years, I had not only failed my second year of university and had to resit that year, gone to a company that had a toxic culture and completely burnt out, but also lost my mum at the age of 17 to an unexpected accident. So all of these events happened within a very short space of time. And that experience of burning out was almost the final straw. And it made me step up and take responsibility for the direction of life I wanted to take. And I think it was almost a sign from the universe that you've got to change course. Otherwise, it's going to be a very, very unfortunate future ahead for you.
Yeah. Well, it sounds too like what I hear a lot of is putting your energy and time into something that really is inspiring to you.
Yeah.
Of course, many of us know that, right? But when we talk about listening to our bodies, and you mentioned a little bit about just sometimes when you go slower, it can actually propel you to go faster, right? You get more done, you accomplish more. But a lot of that is in listening to the signs, like you talked about the signs of the universe, or your intuition, your body, what is happening in and around you to give you the signals that something needs to be changed.
Definitely. I mean, I was suppressing those signals for so long. And I think the moment I started listening to that innate wisdom we all have inside of us, and I trusted the voice more than seeking validation from others, the journey that unfolded was just magical.
Well, let's talk about that. I would love to know, what are some of the things that you started to tweak, to
Mm.
change, and what was the outcome or the product from that?
So when I look back, April, at the journey, I think it began with curiosity. I was in this industry that was not fulfilling, and this job that burnt me out. So the first thing I had to do was to get out of that situation. So I handed in my resignation. I took some time out of the industry, but of course, all I knew was finance. So I ended up going for a job that had kinder hours. There was less pressure. I didn't mind about a career progression because for me, this was a stepping stone. But the
Mm.
main thing is, it was less pressure, 9 to 5. So it gave me the evenings and weekends to do a bit of exploration, to figure out what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so the curiosity drove me to read books, go to seminars, listen to audiobooks and podcasts, and just explore the world beyond the world that I knew, this bubble that I was in. And as I did that, I realized that in order to make the progress I wanted, I had to really up-level my environment. So I had to start changing the people I spend time with in order to think.
Mm.
And as I did that, I became empowered, inspired, and energized to think bolder and act bolder. And
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to stop you real quick because I want to play on that a little bit. When we change our environment, the energy that's around us, the people that, I mean, you did exactly that by finding a different position that gave you more flexibility with your hours in order to explore. And I think that's great that you talk about that I became curious, because I think that curiosity is such a powerful thing for us as a human being. It invites this creativity aspect of us, I believe, too.
Yeah.
And if we weren't curious about learning more, exploring more, finding out more, then we don't advance. And it's impossible to advance without that aspect. So there's those two things that you really became curious, and you also began to change the people and the energy that was around you, both, as far as your environment and
Mm.
the people. So share a little bit about also the people, and what were the challenges around that? Were there any challenges for you? Because I think that a lot of people will feel like that is very difficult to do. We're so
Mm.
familiar with our day in and day out. We're so familiar with the people that are around us that, like, we don't really know what is the first step to take in order to create that sort of change.
So for me, there were a couple of steps to this. The first is because I didn't know people, I could just go, "Hey, do you wanna meet for coffee, or do you wanna catch up on a regular basis to share the work that we're doing?" I started with books. So I started to seek out mentors who wrote books that I could learn from, so I could learn from their wisdom. So those were in effect
Mm.
my first mentors. And then what I did after that is I designed my own MBA, which in my book I refer to as a mental board of advisors. So I could pick people, authors of books, public speakers, businessmen and women, successful individuals, and pick a subset of them that I could go into my mind and visualize sitting at a table where I could ask for their insights and wisdom.
That is
And
brilliant.
that
I just have to pause for a second, because that is so smart to
Mm,
do that. I definitely love to say, of course, many of us have heard it, but we are the sum of the people that we surround
mm,
ourselves with. And that can include people that you don't know personally,
yeah,
physically. And that is, like you talked about, my first mentors were from the authors of the
mm,
books that I read.
mm,
You, Simon, are now a mentor to thousands and
mm,
thousands of people worldwide. And that is an incredible thing. So I just wanted to highlight that too, because there is no cap
mm.
to self-development and self-growth and expansion. We just have to understand that we can grab that from anywhere.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, for me, it was profound because it showed me there was always a different way to look at the challenges, the setbacks, and the hurdles that I faced, and even the dilemmas. And then actually seeing it not from just my point of view, but from other people's point of view allowed me to think differently, allowed me to kind of think of alternative approaches that I may not have considered. And then when it got to the point where I could actually have a physically different environment where the people I could spend time with were successful entrepreneurs and successful leaders, man, the energy in that room was electric. I'd gone from books to visualization to now in person with some incredibly inspiring people. I remember going to my first mastermind at the Ritz Hotel in London, and there were 10 or 12 of us. And when we did the introductions to each person and the business they were running, I was just not only in awe, but also I was full of imposter syndrome, thinking, well, what am I sitting here? Why am I sitting here
Mm. Mhm.
amongst all these incredible individuals? But even though I felt that, and also the dumbest person in that room, what it did for me is that it took my goals and it took them from being big to being astronomical.
Yeah.
I noticed that the habits that I aspired to embrace, they were normal for them. These habits were normal for these people to embrace. And so very quickly, those habits became my normal. And the impact that had in the weeks and months after was transformational.
I think that you offer so many great points here for people to don't be afraid to be in that room, definitely, because like you said, your goals came stemmed from big to astronomical, because you're starting to see a different pictures from what other people are doing and how they have this open mind and bigger pictures and doing all the things. And I want to go back a little bit to how you really envisioned yourself at the table, having a conversation with people who inspired you, and sharing with the audience that we have the freedom to really allow our minds to go there. And there's a lot of feedback where people say, ask the question, what would this person do? What would Joe Dispenza do? What would he say? What would Oprah say? We talk about the people that may inspire us, and what would they do and say, or our parents, just anybody who really influences us. And setting yourself around a table with many people and then eventually being there physically with them, I can only imagine that would be such an incredible experience, and absolutely imposter syndrome setting in. And you are continuing to do that, Simon. Do you feel that are you still having that a little bit? Because I mean, you're definitely speaking worldwide, and you're getting in front and having the discussions. What is that like for you now?
It's a lot less so, because I guess in the position I'm at today, there's evidence to back up the fact that, I'm doing okay for myself and I'm having the impact I want to have. Whereas at the beginning of my journey, there was no evidence. There was nothing I'd really achieved when I was still making the transition from working for someone to working for myself. But having that conviction that I can make something of what I'm working on allows me to go into these rooms now and see myself at that same level. See myself as somebody that can also add value. And so when I had the opportunity just in the last 12 months to connect and have conversations with the likes of Deepak Chopra, Jay Shetty, Stephen Bartlett, and so on, it was amazing. I mean, to be able to see each other at the same level, have a deep conversation, and then to come out of it a wiser person. Those experiences not just informed me, but took my ideas and gave me other ideas to consider, or even took those ideas and made them even bigger. And that for me is the importance of up-leveling our environment.
Absolutely. Such powerful stuff, Simon. Thank you so much for sharing. We're going to go into our sponsorship commercial. And then when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more and discuss what are we doing with the energy that we have? How do we bring in our most productive selves? Stay tuned. Are you ready to take control of your ride to wellness? Rev up with Driven Living. Visit www.drivenliving.com and buckle up for a journey. Get exclusive access to our Wellness Driven Life Show guest portal, where you can dive deep into the minds of our esteemed guests. Sign up for our newsletter and get insider scoops on these distinguished personalities. It's like having a backstage pass to their life-changing wisdom. But that's not all. You'll also receive a free hug. You heard me right, a free hug. An enlightening ebook from the Driven Living team. Discover the science-backed benefits of hugging yourself. It's a fill-up for your wellness tank. Because at Driven Living, we believe in fueling your journey to wellness, both physically and psychologically. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.drivenliving.com today. All right, welcome back. So we're going from being informed to going into being transformed, right? Now we're starting to do the work. We're curious, we're diving into all of the things of how do we learn from others in order to become our best selves. Now let's walk into the transformation aspect. We are energetic beings, and we definitely know this. And so how do we utilize that energy in the most productive way?
So the way we use it in the most productive way is to understand what matters most. So what I mean by this is a lot of us live our days, our weeks, and our months a bit aimlessly. We kind of are stuck in routines that make us busy, that make us go round and round in circles, but not really going anywhere. And we get to the end of the month or we get to the end of the year and we say, wow, where did all of that time go? And the things we told ourselves that we were going to do at the beginning of the year, we didn't even start or we didn't follow through with. And that's the experience that so many people face.
Mm.
Then years or even decades go by before they even start. But to live with intention, to live with purpose, is to understand how to channel your energy in the most productive way. And when I think about energy, I see it through 4 dimensions. So we've got physical energy, mental energy, emotional energy, and spiritual energy.
Mm.
Physical energy I've touched on already. That's the first thing I addressed when I burnt out in my second job in finance. Mental energy is about cultivating a resilient mindset. It is your ability to focus in an ocean of distraction and to access your creative energy. Emotional energy is about the relationship you have with yourself and how you connect with others. And spiritual energy is all about meaning and purpose. So
Mm.
if we are to live with more energy each day, we must address those 4 dimensions. Once we do, what happens is people start to feel it. When you talk on stage, when you have a conversation with someone, when you just show up doing what you do, people feel the energy that you put into your work. People can feel it. It's like a language that has no words, yet you and I can feel it. Maya
Mm.
Angelou once said that people may forget what you said and what you did, but they will never forget the way you made them feel.
Feel.
That is the transference of energy. And so once we address those areas in our everyday, what happens is the impact we have starts to scale.
Yeah. I think that is a really good way to I am going back to mentors.
Mm,
But when we start to think about how people make us feel, that's a really great way to
mm,
find the people that you really want to surround yourself with. And that's that energy that I feel uplifted, I feel energized because I'm around this person or I'm listening to this person. You can take it as far as relationships too. Oftentimes you're in a really wonderful healthy relationship when you want to become a better person when you're around that person. They inspire you so that you just want to show up to be your best self,
mm.
and vice versa. So when we talk about being around other people and how that energy is transferred, a smile is contagious, and when there's that one person that walks into the room and you just sense it, you just know it, your eyes weren't on them to begin with, but you know that there's some sort of powerful force that just walked in the room. That's what we're talking about.
That is what we call presence. Somebody has a presence about them. And you know when somebody has a presence about them when they show up with the right energy, but when they're living in the moment. And that ability to live in the present moment is so rare when you look at the world, because so many of us are trapped in this notion that we have to be busy to be productive. And so what happens, which is humorous but very truthful at the same time, is that we find extra things to keep us busy to avoid doing the things we know we must do. And
Mm.
that just keeps us trapped in this idea of just staying busy for busy's sake. But when you meet people who are living in the present moment, who have this presence about them, it is absolutely magnetic. You are drawn to them. You want to spend time in their energy. And I think so many of us lack that. It reminds me of something the Dalai Lama said. He said, too many of us experience this tragic scenario of living
Mm.
if we are never going to die and then dying having never really lived. But if we live in the present moment, because that is all we can control, and we show up and give people our attention, because what people want is not our presence, they want that energy. You can be present with your children but looking at your phone half the time, or you can be present and they have your full attention. That's what we want. And that is also the greatest gift that we can give to others.
It is. And I think that when we think about the spiritual aspect of ourselves, we are beings that want to serve. And when you say this is the greatest gift that we can give others, then that is the highest servitude, right? And what are some of the things that we could do to start tapping into that recharge? Because it's so easy to be stuck in the rat race or what have you, the day-to-day. What are some of the things, what are some of the advice that you would give to others to reset?
The first thing to do is to look at your schedule and start blocking out me time. Because what happens is that when you get a meeting invite into your email, we're quick to say yes to those meeting invites. We're quick to say yes to those social events or holiday plans. But how quick are we at blocking out me time in our diaries? And the thing is, if you don't block out me time, there will always be something else that will come into your diary and claim that time away from you. But if you can block out me time in your schedule and treat it with as much importance as your meetings and social events, then that becomes the time you can use to disconnect, to recharge, to reset, and rejuvenate. So that would be the first thing I would share. Second,
well, I think, sorry, as I interrupt you one more time, but we don't typically like to go there, right? To block out the me time. I think that we often get into this idea that it is a selfish act to concentrate more on ourselves. Or as a parent, and you may understand this too, we feel like we are so in the service of our children and our families, and really putting so much of our energy into that it can be more challenging. So I think that is brilliant, and it should be the first step to block out that me time and start there. I mean, that's almost a vital aspect to this.
You're right. It's challenging for a lot of us, because for so long we associate being busy and in constant doing mode as productive, and not doing those things as not productive. But what we must realize is that you can't fully be productive without slowing down, because productivity is less about adding more and more about removing the things in your diary so you can spend your energy on the things that matter with the people you love. And the fact is, you can't pour from an empty cup. When we talk about children and family, if I'm not feeling energized myself, how the hell am I going to be there for my children? What am I actually giving my children if I'm exhausted by the time I get to spend time with them? So I remember when my wife and I first sent our daughter to nursery, we felt a bit guilty at the beginning. We're sending her to childcare, but we could have her home and spend time with her. But then we realized that actually when she's in childcare, we get to rest and rejuvenate. So when she does come back home, we can give a lot more of ourselves to her. But if she's with us 24/7 and we're just running on empty, we're not really going to be there for her. We're going to be showing up in a very different way to when we actually have time away from her during the day. Then when we pick her up, bring her home, cook dinner for her, we can be completely present and she can get the best of us. So I think that it's understanding that we all have an energetic rhythm to the way we work. And you need to have periods, of course, where you are able to do deep work, but you also have to have periods where you can rest with intention. There's a saying that goes, work hard, play hard. The saying that I prefer is work hard, rest hard. And the harder you work, the more rest you need, because it is in those moments where your mind is able to connect those dots, to give birth to insight and creativity. If you're always on, you're not giving yourself the space to reflect on life, to reflect on your progress, to reflect on where you are. And that's necessary if you are to adapt and pivot in the ways that will help you achieve your goals.
Yeah, I would love to play along with that a little bit too, because when
Mm,
we talk about some of the greatest minds in histories, uh, Einstein, for
yeah.
example, they were really going into that the unconscious, the rejuvenation, taking naps or sleeping for massive amount of hours that we just do not do in this day
Mm,
and age. I think that there's a lot of people that are operating on a 5 hour
mm,
sleep schedule. Let's just say, for example, just to
mm,
do that mediocre time frame, but it might not be enough, because that is exactly where we do enter into that creative aspect, where we enter
mm,
into the world of getting answers to life's
mm.
problems, and then we show up once in the waking state to be able to play off of that, off of the things that we were experiencing and learning and working out in the unconscious mind.
Mm, mm. No, it's it's why that has to change in terms of our relationship with that before we can put those things in action. Because if you put it into action, but you don't see the value in it, you're not really going to rest with intention. And as you said, some of the greatest breakthroughs in history have not come from people sitting at their desk staring into books or staring into screens, but from those moments of disconnection.
Yeah.
Even Isaac Newton, gravity with the apple falling on his head, or Archimedes sitting in the bathtub and Eureka, he has that insight. Those things didn't come from working in front of books and screens. They came from disconnecting and being with your thoughts. And so the notion of slowing down in order to speed up is exactly that, because when you slow down, you're able to take all those dots and connect them together to make sense of the things you're learning, the things that you are taking in from external sources. But if you don't have that time, how are you going to have those breakthroughs?
Yeah. My husband always says, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And it took me a while on my journey as I continue to evolve and become wiser throughout
Mm,
life. But when we're young and we're headstrong and stubborn, well, that's me anyway. I just want to go fast and get everything done,
mm,
and kind of just like a bull in a china shop, right? And yet it takes those lessons to really learn to go
mm,
within, to be quiet, to listen to ourselves. And it's definitely a journey. It's easier said than done. But there is this truth about that, where we're going slower and thinking more methodically about
mm.
the things that you're doing, and being more intentional and being more present. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't feel like we can get to being present without it.
Mm, definitely, because I think you need that part, the word you said just now, intention. We have to live with intention first. Because when we live with intention, we understand what our body and our mind needs in order to function at its best. Because when you live with intention, you're planning your day the night before. You're planning your week and month around the things that matter. Otherwise, the days and week run you, and you become reactive. And you end up spending most of your time fighting fires rather than actually doing the things that you need to do to move forward. And so for me, when it comes to habits, one of the habits I share the most is actually beginning with the end in mind. Sounds easy, sounds simple, but actually it's the start of living with intention.
Mm,
How
yeah.
will I know that today will have been a productive day? How will I know that this week would have been a great one? How would I know that by the end of this year would have been an extraordinary one? Now, once you have clarity on that destination, you can work backwards. And
Mm,
then you can say, what must I do today in order for me to take one step forward towards making that a reality? And if it's just one step, in a year from now, that is 365 steps forward. Just imagine who and where you could be.
Yeah, I love the begin with the end in mind. And it definitely brings me back to one of my favorite books, which is Seven
Mm,
Habits of Highly Effective People. And understanding definitely where you're going is going to bring us closer to the journey. And I know the entrepreneurial world, you have to have that in order to really be successful, because
mm,
everything is on you, right?
yeah.
In business, if we go into the business realm, and nobody else is telling you what you have to do, so you
Mm,
have to be able to create that and envision that for yourself in order to stay on track to meet those goals. And gamification is such a
mm,
powerful thing too, where we strive to meet something, and we have that little bit of excitement because we met it, and we can celebrate that,
mm.
so to speak. So having an idea of where we're going, and those tiny little steps like you talked about, just imagine what it would be like if you were meeting your goal every
Mm.
single day, and then a year has gone by and all the things that you've accomplished. So when we bring our energy spurts into that, how do we identify where our most powerful energized moments are throughout
Mm.
the day?
So the best way to begin is to track your energy. So what I mean by that is divide your day into, say, early morning, early afternoon, evening. And at different points of the day, just kind of note down a bit of paper on your phone. How are you feeling now? And what do you feel is impacting your level of energy? So say 0 to 5, out of 5, what is your level of energy right now? Now, if you do that for a couple of weeks, you will start to see some patterns. What times of day am I experiencing high levels of energy, and why? And what periods of the day am I experiencing lower levels of energy, and why? Or even particular days of the week. Now, once you've got some of that data, you can start tweaking the way you work. So maybe when I have high levels of energy, I'm going to reserve that time for the work that is more intense. And the moments where I have lower levels of energy, that's where I can look to reset, to disconnect, or do some of the lower value tasks that need to be done. But if you don't have that awareness, what happens is that you can very well end up doing high value tasks at times where you just have no energy. And
Mhm.
that's why you may end up procrastinating. Uh, a task which may only need 10 minutes ends up taking a couple of hours. So you're optimizing the way you operate by leveraging that insider data about your energy.
So I think that you have also brought a lot of the physical aspect to
Mm,
it, where we that's the first thing that you adjust. You realize that you
mm.
don't have the physical energy that you need. And I'm curious, what are some of the things that you do or you have found? What are some of your practices that you bring into each day
Mm.
to be able to maintain that on a physical aspect?
Sure. So looking at physical energy, I see it as three pillars. So for my sleep, I look to have consistent sleep. So what it means is that when I get to the weekends, I'm not waking up later. I'm waking up the same time I would if it was a weekday. So I aim for 7 to 8 hours of sleep minimum each day. And if I need to, I'll take a nap during the day. So, for example, if as a parent, I've had a particularly tough night with our child, then I may need a nap during the day just to catch up on the sleep. The second pillar is all about exercise. And for me, that is a non negotiable each and every day. Even if it's just walking outside in nature to going to a gym and doing an intense workout, for me, it is a non negotiable. Because with exercise, it may not always be something you want to do, but once you've done it, it is an experience you never regret because of how you feel after you've done some exercise or you've got some fresh air or you've just moved your body. And the third pillar when it comes to physical energy is nutrition. What are you feeding your body? Are you feeding your body with bad fuel? That means that by the time you get to mid-afternoon, you're going to have a slump. Or are you feeding your body with energy-rich foods, nutrient-dense foods that is going to give you the energy you need to show up when it comes to your work?
You know what I love about that, Simon, is it's just it's simplistic, and it
Mm,
hits the main major essential pillars. You have your sleep, which is essential, your physical exercise, which is also essential, and your nutrition, which is essential. So you're definitely hitting all of these things. And thank you so much for sharing that and making it simplified for the audience. I think that it's oftentimes we overwhelm ourselves with all of the things. There's so much out there. And finding the thing that is the truth that we absolutely need, those essentials, and the things that work for us, and how we play about those in our daily world and our life and with the people that we surround ourselves with. So I find it fascinating for people who, like, such as yourself, who are traveling the world and speaking on all the stages and being able to maintain and harbor all of the energy that they need in order to do so. That is not an easy position when, you have the flight here and flight there across the world. And we talk about, are we really accessing the sleep that we need? And we have the jet lag, and then you're in front of a lot of people and there's a lot of different energy surrounding us. So are there any other tips or tricks that you have found because you're living in this life now?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to living with intention. So if I know ahead of time that an event is going to happen, or I need to travel, or I need to be away, what I do is I plan ahead of time in a way that allows me to stay energized. So to give you a couple of examples, when I published my book in April last year, I knew that in the weeks and months leading into the launch and after the launch, I would probably be doing a lot of interviews or press and activities related to the PR side of things when it came to raising awareness about my book. So what I did in those months before and after my book launch is I said no to any new clients. I kept my diary as free as possible so I could be responsive to what came in associated with the release of my book. So that meant I had the energy to respond and do all the things I needed to do to get message of my book out to as many people as possible. When it comes to travel, let's say I'm going to the US or Asia and it's a long flight, what I do is I calculate roughly how much sleep I would need so that I will be rested when I get to the other side. And also, if it's close to the evening, how much I need to reserve so I have enough ammunition to sleep through the night once I'm there. And I always bring my gym kit. I've mentioned earlier about it being a non-negotiable. So as best I can, I will look to stay in hotels where there is an accessible gym. If not, I will just bring my running gear and I can just go running in the outdoors. And when I go on flights, I never drink alcohol on a flight. So I drink as much water as I can because that keeps the body hydrated, it keeps it energized. And I think it's just being sensible with the way we approach traveling, events, or deadlines. Knowing what's coming up, how can you ensure that you are going to show up with the best energy possible to deliver what you want to share?
I think what you said, being sensible and really planning ahead and understanding what you're getting into, prepping, and definitely being prepared. I bring my running shoes so I can go outside and I can run, actually get some sunshine and some nature maybe while I'm traveling. And, the hotel, hopefully they have a gym so I can do that as well. Drinking plenty of water on a plane. I mean, that's just, yes, absolutely. Because I think that it is oftentimes where we go into these social events that there may be alcohol involved. And so really, if you're going to, engage in that manner and aspect, how do we still, prep ourselves in order to show up, to be our best selves, given those circumstances? And so you are around the globe, speaking on all the stages, saying all of the things. I would love to know, Simon, what is your most passionate subject? What is the key thing that you love to talk about the absolute most?
So right now I'm talking a lot about energy because I get invited to talk about the book Energize. But within that area, the one that I really enjoy talking about is our creative energy. The
Mm.
importance of accessing our creative energy in order to think different, original, and innovative. Because I think that too many businesses are trying to copy other businesses, or they're trying to do something or follow a particular path. But few actually try to think different and,
Mm.
and try to be original in the way they deliver products or service. And so for me, ever since I published a book, I really wanted to tap into that. So I just got a bit of a cough that came.
Take your time.
Yeah, so ever since I launched the book, I wanted to tap into that because I realized that what happens is that when we do things in original ways, the audience that receives that, they then talk about it. They want to share it with their friends and their colleagues. So to give you an example, when I published the book, a few weeks before, I partnered with the Connaught Hotel here in London, and they designed a cocktail called Energize. And so for 4 weeks after publication, if you went to this bar and you ordered the Energize cocktail, it would be presented on a signed copy of my book.
That's brilliant. I just gotta say, that's
And,
brilliant.
and
Wow.
then a couple of months after the publication of my book, we put together one of the world's first book launches in the metaverse. So you could put
Mm.
your virtual reality headsets on. Our avatars would connect. We would network. You would hear me speak in a virtual auditorium. In a few weeks' time, I'm shooting a collaboration with an artist who is going to be putting together an original piece of art called Energize, which is abstract colors inspired by my book. And we're looking to raise funds for charity through the auction or sale of it. And then next year, I'm looking at doing an 8-course dining experience about my book. So taking you through the lessons of my book, but with the medium of
Wow.
food. And so this is for me all about creative energy. And
Yeah.
beyond that, looking at Simon AI, where people can connect with my AI in the virtual world. And so I think that when you can tap into the ability to think different and do things in very unique and original ways, that's what helps get attention to what you're doing. It gets people excited about what you're putting out into the world.
And I can see that you're excited about it because how could you not be when you
Hmm.
are creating so many different things and really utilizing other people's creative ideas as
Yeah.
well. And so you bounce ideas off of each other and you create these innovative, incredible ideas and
Hmm.
techniques in order to show up a little bit differently. And we are living in such an incredible age with AI and the technology that we have. It truly seems limitless, right? The things that we are able to do
Hmm.
and start applying. I mean, there's so much and it's super, super cool. So you've given incredible examples. I don't even know if I need to ask you, what are you doing next? But I'm going to, you have, I mean, you've written a very powerful book that
Hmm.
you are continuing to go out and work with. And you could just probably keep that book and continue to work with that because energy is everything.
Hmm.
And is there anything, what is the next thing for you?
So some of the things I have in mind, first of all, it's the AI stuff that I mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's the ability for people to be coached or mentored by my AI if they can't afford the human one-to-one. Looking at creating a metaverse campus about my work, so people with headsets can experience it in the virtual world. And then beyond that, I would love to do a second book and maybe take some of my work onto TV or film. So that's some of the things on my radar. But we will see what happens. I'm not attached to the outcomes. I'm simply open to everything.
Oh, it's beautiful. So, lastly, one other question. Simon, who has inspired you the most?
That's
It's
a
a
tough
tough one.
question because
Yeah.
so many people have inspired me in different ways through my career, whether it's with business or public speaking or marketing. Uh, so I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to, if I may, switch the question to who has been the most important person
Mm,
in my career, because I think that's a lot easier for me to answer, which is my partner. That's without doubt,
yeah.
because I think that when we think about environment, it's easy to forget that who your partner is will be your biggest influence on your environment, because they are
Mm,
the person you spend the most time with. You wake up with them, you go to bed with them, you share your hopes, your dreams, your challenges with them. And so when you have the right partner in your team, what happens is you have the courage to do a lot more than you would have done before. You have a lot more courage to venture into the unknown, to try things, and to stretch yourself out of your comfort zone. So my wife has been the most important person in my life, and I think that her support, her encouragement, has really helped me to navigate the ups and downs of running a business.
Simon, you are very inspiring, and that message is very important. And much like I touched on before, when our partners inspire us to become a better
Mm.
human being in the world, like that's just a powerful combination and relationship. And so that answer was awesome. Loved it. Thank you so much for sharing your insight, your wisdom with all of us. I want to make sure that the audience knows where to find you. And I've had this up here a few times, and it's also in the description below. So anyone tuning in at any point can access that. But for those of you who are listening on a podcast or what have you, Simon's website is www.simonalexanderong.com. That's SIMONALEXANDERONG.com. Find his book, Energize. It's an incredible book packed full of stories and wisdom and insight and science, and you will not be disappointed by reading his book. I can guarantee that. And so I want to say again, Simon, it has been wonderful to have you on the Wellness Driven Life Show. Is there anything else that you want to share with our audience today?
The last thing I would share is that one of the most successful characteristics amongst those who achieve in our world is this bias towards action. The fact that when you make moves towards what you want makes moves towards you. So my challenge to you is, if there has been one particular insight or lesson that you have taken from this episode, how will you action that in the next 24 hours?
Thank you so much, Simon, for sharing your insight and wisdom. Been incredible to have you. We are blessed to have you on the show. Thank you so much. Excited to see all the what's next for you and to continue following you on your journey. So thank you again. Thank you for all of you who are tuning in and supporting the show. Goodbye for now, and we will see you later.